Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, August 15, 2017 meeting of the Edina City Council. Roll call, please, Ms. Tim.
Member Brindle? Here. Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Staunton?
Here.
Member Stewart?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening. Manager Neal, anything you want to add or modify on the agenda?
Nothing to add.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as shown?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the meeting agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Community comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the council on an issue that's not otherwise on the agenda this evening? Yes, sir. Come on up. And I think your choice. If you don't have anything you want us to look at.
No, I don't.
Then you heard Ms. Benarod, I think, or someone say you have 3 minutes, and when you see the amber light, you'll have 30 seconds to go. And give us your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Mark Makajeski. I'm at 6 Orchard Lane. I live in Hilldale neighborhood. I've been there since 1995. And I'd like to preface my comments tonight with, first of all, thanks to Mayor Hovland for we had a little conversation about this topic online, and I appreciated his immediate attention to this. But in my neighborhood, there's an Airbnb, and I've reported it 4 separate times. And one of the things I'd like to 2 things I'd like to bring up is, number one, I've reported it a number of times, and the city doesn't seem to right now have a means of enforcement of the ordinance of a short-term rental. That's become very clear over the past few weeks. And then secondly, I wanted to make aware the city council that I live near this thing right now. And I can tell you nobody probably wants that in their neighborhood. Every weekend there are upwards of 15 people, cars, people I don't know. I live in Hilldale, which is a pretty residential area. It's not, it's not a resort area. It's a quiet residential area. I even have pictures of people moving mattresses in, and this is a 6-bedroom house. So I wanted to kind of increase the sensitivity to the city council, respectfully, about this, because I think coming with the Super Bowl, I think things are going to get worse. And I would kindly request the city council maybe put enforcement in line with this, because other cities, and I've checked, cities like Santa Monica, California, actually have criminal penalties on this. So, that's one thing that right now you can report it. The police don't respond. There's no way to respond right now to this. And the final thing is a lot of lost revenue to the city. It's an illegal, right now it's an unlicensed business that occurs. There are upwards of 14 Airbnbs in the city of Edina, and that's a lot of lost revenue, because I know the Airbnb by my home on 1 Cooper, a guy makes about $9,000, $10,000 a month. So anyway, I see my yellow light is on, and I appreciate your attention.
All right, let us see what we can do about this. Thanks, Mr. Hedgkowski.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you taking the time to come in and personally address the council. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the council? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Frank Lorenz. I live at 7151 York Avenue South. I've been a Edina resident for 35 years. I was here 3 or 4 meetings ago and started speaking about the intention of the city to increase the size of its police force, and I ran out of time, so I'd like to pick up more or less where I left off.
Sure, go ahead. The
city engaged an out-of-state consulting firm and paid them an unknown amount of money. I assume it was anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, but they recommended that the city increase the size of its police force by 40 officers and add another ambulance crew. I'm not sure what the sworn size of the police department is, but unless the city population grows significantly, it's unclear that we really need more police. I have the occasion to call 911 once or twice a year, and it's usually for a blown-out stoplight at an intersection during rush hour or a disabled vehicle on an exit ramp or something like that. In some cases, it's been public drunkenness or aggressive panhandling. And in all of those instances, the police have responded in less than 4 minutes. And I think Edina, with its current population, is in a sweet spot, because if the original responding officer needs backup, he can get it in another 3 or 4 minutes. And usually with 2 or 3 police, the protagonist can be talked out of whatever he, she, or it planned to do. I've seen that happen a number of times. So the consultants made it seem like Edina was on the brink of sliding into being Spanish Harlem or East Los Angeles, and in order to counter this wave of criminality, by God, we got to hire 40 people. And it's unclear how many of those 40 will be added next year. I'm sure the city manager has penciled in 10 or 12 of them, but since the police usually work 12-hour shifts and they have to cover 24/7, 365, that means about 8 more officers on the street at any point in time. It's really unclear that we need those people, and so I do hope that despite the the empire building objectives of the city manager, that you don't add police until we really need them, because at this point it's almost a serendipitous situation, and you can always spend more money, but the question would be why.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lorenz. Anyone else wish to address the council this evening, your council? All right, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the next portion of the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda in its entirety.
Second.
Got a motion and second to adopt the consent agenda. Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then the next portion of the agenda is special recognitions and presentations. Kaylin Idness is here this evening and going to give us her July Speak Up Edina presentation. Ms. Idness, welcome.
Thank you for having me tonight. All right, so Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm the Senior Communications Coordinator, Kaylin Idness, with our Communications Division, and in July, we focused our discussion on Speak Up Edina on street repairs. Speak Up Edina is an online resident engagement platform, and each month we host a discussion featuring a different topic. In last month we talked about food trucks. However, this month we are talking about street reconstruction. And some questions we asked were, if you had a street reconstruction project or street maintenance completed in your neighborhood, were you notified ahead of time? And if so, how did you hear about it? How would you prefer to be notified about street reconstruction projects and street maintenance in your neighborhood, and how far in advance? And then if you've previously reported a pothole or another needed street repair, how did you go about doing so, and how was the process, and how was the response time? And we chose this conversation topic because based on the 2017 Quality of Life Survey results, 54% of residents rated the quality of street repairs as excellent or good. It's increased from 38% since 2011, but there's still room for improvement. So we wanted to dive a little deeper into what residents think about these things. And the last question we asked was, how do you think street maintenance and street reconstruction projects should be prioritized? The conversation was open July 1st through the 31st. It was a quiet discussion. Only 22 comments were made in total. 705 users and 887 total sessions and 3,319 page views. What I found interesting about this discussion as opposed to the food truck was we only had 22 comments, but we had 3,300 page views. Last month, we had our food truck one, and we had about 60-some comments, but we only had 1,500 page views. So people were checking in on the discussion. They just didn't have much to add. The majority of the commenters were from Edina. And you know, the common themes were a little difficult to pull from this conversation because I found that in the answers, people spoke more specifically about a street project that was happening right now on their street or some street maintenance that they saw on another street. So it was very, very, I guess, resident focused in the fact that it was just really geographically decided upon like how close the construction was to their house. They didn't really answer the questions in general, which makes sense. Some things and a lot of both sides. So the city does a good job hiring consultants to evaluate the residential streets, and then other people said the city's spending too much money on consultants. Some people talked about the streets taking a beating due to redevelopment, and there were a few more comments about that were consistent. Some people mentioned one or two about the traffic calming measures being dangerous in the winter months, and that they really did like the living streets idea, but maybe we should approach the traffic calming measures a little differently. Some people said focus more energy on repairing the state of the streets and less about adding bike lanes, so maintaining what we have. And then other people said we need more bike lanes. So that was really equal there, and people were actually really happy with the response time after reporting a problem such as a pothole, and they really appreciated the notification. They said the majority of the residents said that they were notified well in advance. They appreciated some weekly communication. However, some people said that they wanted it to be even more specific. On what day exactly this is going to be done so that they can plan their days around it. And that was more in the major street reconstruction when people have to drive through it and maybe they can't get to their driveway as easily that day. So like I said, it wasn't a super active discussion. We had people kind of all over the table on this one. But there were a couple good comments there that you guys should check out. Next month, right now, actually, we're featuring a discussion on Braemar Park and the master plan, and it's a really active one, so I encourage you to go check it out and see what people are talking about. And it's interesting, the ideas that they have. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of excitement about possible mountain bike trails. So,
Good.
You have any questions?
Questions for Ms. Idness? All right, good. Thank you for your monthly report.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Next matter we have in front of us is Director Milner, and we're going to talk about the Vernon Avenue functional classification change, and he's got a guest with him from Hennepin County, Jason Piper. Director Milner.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Hennepin County and the city of Edina, we've been discussing this since last fall for your consideration tonight concerning the Vernon Avenue functional classification change. This change will provide funding opportunities so both agencies can try to meet the multimodal transportation system. As you mentioned, Jason Piper, a transportation engineer from Hennepin County, is here tonight. He'll present the details, and then we'll both be available for questions and concerns here afterwards.
Very good. Thanks, Director Milner. Mr. Piper, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. As Chad indicated, my name is Jason Piper. I'm an engineer with our planning staff out in our Public Works facility in Medina. Tonight, I'm here representing Hennepin County, seeking City Council support for the functional class change of County Road 158, Vernon Avenue. I have a number of slides. Please feel free to interrupt me with questions. Here's a map showing the limits of County Road 158, Vernon Avenue. To the southwest, we have Crosstown, which is Highway 62, and to the east, we have Highway 100. So Vernon Avenue, the piece that we're going to discuss today, is shown in gray. As you continue east further into the city of Edina and towards the city of Minneapolis, that roadway is under the jurisdiction of the city of Edina, and that is 50th Street. So tonight we're proposing to seek functional class upgrade for Vernon Avenue from a B minor arterial to an A minor arterial. It will not have significant impacts to how the roadway is used or how we need to accommodate design in the future. It just provides funding eligibility through the regional solicitation, which is offered every 2 years. And we'd like to recommend county leadership to consider submitting an application for Vernon Avenue. Kind of went over these points already. Vernon Avenue, as you know, does serve as a critical route when crosstown backs up. There's a lot of congestion on crosstown. It may not save a lot of time for users, but it does keep cars moving. So you do see significant peaks during the AM and PM. Again, we are just here today for the functional class upgrade, so we are not here to gain your support for any sort of project. Again, here's pictures showing congestion. You'll see those ramps back up at Crosstown and Vernon. Both intersections at Vernon and Crosstown, so the westbound ramps and the eastbound ramps, they back up pretty far in the, especially in the PMs. So it just indicates the what's the right word? Just the need for providing good traffic operations along Vernon Avenue. The existing bridge over the Canadian Pacific Railroad, this is near Highway 100, that's currently load posted. What that means is we're restricting specific trucks from using the bridge. I believe the bridge is over 75 years old, and our bridge design team has indicated a desire to replace the bridge in the next 3 to 5 years. So the regional solicitation that offers federal funding every 2 years, we'd like to consider both a roadway and a bridge project, and those conversations would take place over the next year with City of Edina staff. You see the picture of the load posting sign there. Here's a photo, the aging bridge structure. Our design team, they go out and survey the bridge every 2 years. It's satisfactory for certain vehicles to go over, obviously, but not heavy vehicles. The bridge structure is very old and is deteriorating, so they would like to replace it in the next 3 to 5 years, as I already said. One thing you may notice is the lack of pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, specifically on the east end towards Highway 100. This picture is taken in front of Jerry's Hardware and Jerry's Foods. There is walkable space, kind of those brick pavers you see. However, it's heavily obstructed by vegetation, traffic signal handholds. So an able-bodied person like myself could use that paver area to walk. However, a person with a disability, specifically a wheelchair, would not be able to safely utilize that side of the sidewalk or side of the roadway. This is on the south side. However, there are sidewalks on the north side. So we are not prohibiting pedestrians altogether, but it is somewhat rare to not have sidewalks on both sides of a road in this type of setting. So a capital project such as a full reconstruction would allow us to kind of provide a complete street that would accommodate bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles. As we move forward with potential capital projects, Hennepin County was participated and is very aware of your Grandview Area District Plan. We would ensure that future capital improvements on Vernon Avenue, both to the roadway and the bridge near Highway 100, would align with your plan, specifically working with Chad and his team. One thing that has come up time and time again is access. There's a lot of access with the local businesses, so a capital project would give us the opportunity to make modifications. We're not necessarily saying removing access, but the word consolidate comes up a lot. So we want to take this as an opportunity to improve safety and operations along the roadway by modifying driveways when the opportunities come up. So with that, I'm here for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Piper?
Sure.
Mike?
Thank you for the presentation. So as we look at, if you go back just a couple slides, that's actually a nice graphic, the Grandview Transportation Plan, that the county was an integral part of that planning. If you increase, so I'm excited on the notion of this classification allowing maybe funding sources and starting to achieve some of the things in the plan, when you increase the classification, does that diminish the opportunity? Because one part of the plan wasn't to make sure we could move traffic as quickly as possible through here. It was to actually balance the needs of pedestrians and other, transportation classifications, and not just for the cars. So would it prohibit us from adding, say, in this diagram, there's a couple maybe controlled intersections that aren't there today. Would that create an actual problem?
It would not create a problem. Mayor, council members, excuse me. County staff would work directly with Chad's team for about 2 to 3 years in the design process. We'd look at traffic operations, traffic control specifically, so your traffic signals. And what we would propose, we would seek city council approval for. We call it a preliminary layout. Once that layout's approved, we start the formal design process.
So you'd be working hand in hand with our city staff and.
Yes, it'd be a very in-depth conversation looking at existing right-of-way widths, vehicle lane widths, bicycle lane widths, sidewalk widths, and it's going to be a challenge, but we're excited about it.
And then one more question, the bridge that you're referring to, is that a somewhat recent kind of revelation that maybe we might even replace it that soon in that 3 to 5 year window?
I wouldn't call it a revelation, just our capital budget has been over-programmed for a few years.
Yeah.
We're doing work currently on Franklin Avenue Bridge in Minneapolis, and that was over a $30 million project. So that has definitely delayed other bridge improvements throughout the county.
Okay, great, thank you.
Member Brindle.
Thank you. By changing from a B minor arterial to an A minor arterial, then you would be able to apply for additional funding?
Mayor Hovland, city council members, it would provide us eligibility for the regional solicitation. That is our main federal funding source for capital
Okay.
projects. So
Okay. And would that funding be used on Vernon Avenue, or would it be used on other A minor arterials?
Those decisions are made by county leadership, so that includes our assistant county administrator and our county board of commissioners. I, as a county staff member, provides them with a list of potential projects. They review the list and make recommendations for what they're comfortable seeking federal funds for. So it would be one of about 10 roadway projects that would be considered at the higher level for federal funding.
Okay, and that all goes into a pool then of A minor arterial projects. Am I thinking about this correctly?
Yes, you are, but we are speaking just in terms of regional solicitation projects. Our capital improvement program is managed differently, where it's all county roadways. However, the regional solicitation only requires A minor arterial status, so then it limits, we have maybe 20 project needs throughout the county.
Okay.
We only have 10 A minor roadways that we could consider for that source of federal funding.
Okay, so that source would work. Oh, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Any downsides that you see in changing the functional classification?
Not at all.
Okay, good. Yep. Member Stewart.
So there seems to be a limited amount of A minor arterial roads that you can do. Is it based on a proportion of all the roads in the county, or what? Why wouldn't this have been A minor before today?
I do not have the specific answer to you, but I know there's some history because Vernon Avenue turns into 50th Street, which there's a gap within the city of Edina that's under city jurisdiction. And it just raises some eyebrows that we have a county road that then changes to city jurisdiction and then back to county jurisdiction once you extend eastward past France Avenue.
So that's part of my question. Are we limited on how much of our roads could be county roads so that we would share in some of that, or why not make the whole thing a county road?
we are allocated funds based on the miles of state aid roadways. We have a formal jurisdictional transfer process that is reviewed by our county board of commissioners. So it's usually a 2 to 3 year process where we go back and negotiate between the city and county, because essentially either the city or the county is handing one another more pavement to maintain, so that requires more resources as far as paving crews and what have you and snow plows to maintain it.
right.
So it's usually a slow process, and you negotiate back and forth. Does that answer
Okay,
your
so,
question?
and we don't have to add this to the A minor category, we don't have to take anything else off of the A minor and push it to B or something?
Correct. This will be reviewed by the Metropolitan Council.
Right.
I believe we have a strong chance because we have full access to both Highway 62 and Highway 100. So it's somewhat puzzling why it's not an A minor arterial already.
And then is the rest of Vernon and then where it turns into Gleason, is that already fit in the same category?
The county road jurisdiction, so starting at Crosstown and driving kind of northeastbound towards Highway 100, that's all a B minor arterial. Once you cross from it being a county road to a city street, where it goes from Vernon to 50th Street.
No, you're going the other direction. Vernon to Gleason, so going to the southwest, is that all already a county road?
Can I pull up the map
Yep.
for us to get on the same page?
Chad, you can point it out to him there.
You're talking south of 62? Is that the question? Because right now, we're
no,
asking for a
north of
functional
62.
change for the whole
So
segment.
north of 62, it's
Yep.
Gleason until it bends there.
And this is asking for support to change the classification for that entire length. So
Oh,
it
it
is a
is.
portion of Gleason
I thought it was
also.
just to 63rd.
No, it's from
to,
Highway 100 all the way to
53rd.
62,
Okay.
because it has to connect between the two.
Okay, so everything from Highway 100 to 62 Crosstown,
Correct.
including what is part of Gleason then?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have the phraseology proper? Because I didn't see anything about Gleason in there.
We may have to check the language on the resolution for that.
We try to keep things simple when we move forward, so we just
Yeah.
selected the one local name.
But the
I
road
apologize.
changes names.
Correct.
And actually where it changes names, Vernon does continue to the west. So,
However, there is a sign on the, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a sign at the bridge of Crosstown that says you're now going to a city road from a county road. There is a sign there at the Gleason Avenue Bridge.
The blue county road shield?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mean as you go south?
Yeah, as you're going south, there is a sign that designates that the road is changing from a county road to a city road.
okay,
I think, remember Stewart was asking about north,
right,
north of there.
right. The language just said Vernon, it didn't say anything about
Basically
Gleason.
from the Crosstown
Right.
Bridge north is what
The
you were
Crosstown
saying.
Bridge
Yeah.
north to where it turns into Vernon, yeah.
But the span, I guess what I'm trying to clarify is the span is from that sign to Highway 100, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so this changes for County Road 158,
Right.
which is Gleason and Vernon.
Right.
The names are the city name. The
Right.
county road is what we're going to change the
All right.
designation on, so
Yeah.
it's already covered in the county one.
So you
It
were
is.
thinking, remember Brindle,
Designation.
that sign represented the magic spot where it switched from city to county and vice versa?
Yep,
It's the
And I think
center
that
line of
won't
the
change,
bridge.
it just becomes arterial A instead of arterial B.
right.
So you should probably just change the resolution to be County Road 158 between Highway 100 and Highway 62.
Exactly.
You wanna
Yeah,
We can make that
You want to
change.
make that motion, member
So
Staunton?
moved.
I'll second.
We got a motion and second to request to change the functional classification of County Road 158 to provide eligibility for regional solicitation funding in 2018. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Thank you. Mr. Piper, thanks for coming in tonight. All right, we've got one more matter in this particular portion of the agenda. My computer cooperates here. We've got a resolution approving grants and donations, Resolution 2017-80. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Got a motion and second to adopt the Resolution 2017-80, which would accept donations on behalf of the city of Edina as required by state statute. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Park and Rec Arts Center is the only donee in this particular resolution, and it looks like all in-kind donations. Those donors' names will be posted on the website. Thank you to everybody. And then on to the next portion of the agenda. Correspondence and petitions. Manager Neal, anything in addition to what's on the dais this evening?
There is not.
All right. Aviation noise update. Member Brindle.
Okay. I have my notes. I've had a couple of great conversations recently. I met with Manager Neal and Lauren Olson of the city of Minneapolis earlier today. And last week, I met with Kevin Terrell, a resident of Minneapolis, who also is a volunteer and one of the key information resources in MSP Fair Skies. And the next time the NOC, the Noise Oversight Committee, meets is in September. We have been getting some mail about airport noise lately. And just kind of looking at the trajectory of departures, the north, aircraft that depart to the north generally are the ones that we see coming by this direction. And they, aircraft that impact the airspace over Edina are over South Minneapolis before they're over Edina. So the conversations with Minneapolis are good, they're meaningful, and we kind of talk about issues that we're both concerned about and what's coming up on the Noise Oversight Committee agenda. And so it's just another touch point for us with a group that experiences much of the same thing we do. So that's my report.
Good, thank you. Council comments, or Manager Neal, excuse me, any other airplane noise comments?
No, we didn't. We had a good session with them, and I think for the most part, we continue to see that our interests in terms of airport noise do align with the city of Minneapolis. It's very helpful to have access to their staff who have been very helpful to us in gaining a better understanding of how to advocate properly and effectively.
All right, very good. Council comments, Member Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to comment on Charlottesville, Virginia, a place where I spent 3 years. And I know Charlottesville to be an academic center in Virginia. I know it to be a rare combination of a very bucolic and erudite community. And I was terribly saddened by the events there this past weekend. I just want to offer our thoughts and prayers to not only Heather Heyer, who died, but also Lieutenant Jay Cullen and Virginia State Trooper Burke Bates, who also both died in a helicopter crash related to the events there. But my thoughts, I was particularly struck by some comments that came to us from the executive director of the National League of Cities, Clarence Anthony, and I just wanted to quote this. There's still much work to be done on the long, difficult road of racial healing. But while racism is undeniably a part of America's past, it has no place in our country's future. Saturday's display of racist violence and bigotry has no place in our society, period. No matter what name it travels under, white supremacy, white nationalism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, racialized hate is a virus that robs us of our safety and our freedom. So moving on to things that we did the past few weeks here. Thursday, August 3rd was
Thank you, Member Stewart.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
Thursday, August 3rd was the grand opening for 66 West. I think many of us were there. We can be very proud that we have this facility in our community. And congratulations to the many, many people who participated in getting that done. I think it's an amazing accomplishment. On Thursday, August 10th, we all participated in a tour of the infrastructure. Director Milner, you and your team did a great job of setting that up and taking us through some of the pieces of what helps Edina and Edina's residents live every day with clean water and good sewage and stormwater and everything else. The stuff that when it's working well, nobody notices, and nobody's been noticing, so congratulations. We, on Monday the 14th, last night, raced between two different meetings. There was a small area planning meeting for the 44th and France area that seemed to be getting a lot of great participation from people in the community. So thank you. And then I just caught the very tail end of an immigration event that was at the Hughes Pavilion at Centennial Lakes Park, sponsored by our Human Rights and Relations Commission. So thank you for that. I also want to mention that just tonight I was at the visitation for Bob Burley, the patriarch of the Burley family. Many members of that family remain in Edina, and it's a great family, but just a tribute to Bob Burley here. And finally, I was pleased in listening to the radio on Sunday morning to hear Jim Fry of Edina as a contestant on the puzzle segment of Sunday Edition on National Public Radio with puzzle master Will Shorts. Congratulations to Jim Fry, and thank you for doing your hometown proud. So coming up, August 21st, don't forget, is the eclipse next Monday. August 22nd, next Tuesday, is a ribbon cutting for Gateway Bank in Edina up there at 4530 France Avenue. And September 4th, Labor Day, hats off to all who toil. So our next city council meeting is on a Wednesday, on September the 6th. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Brindle.
Thank you. I had a resident question today about correspondence. There are 5 items of correspondence attached to our agenda this time, but I've received more than 5 items of correspondence. So I wonder how it is that all of that doesn't get attached to the agenda.
I'm going to ask our assistant city manager if she would care to comment on that, how it is structured, please.
Absolutely. Councilmember Brindle, we had decided, I believe it was in one of the work sessions in January, which emails would be put into the packet for correspondence, and the requirements for packet correspondence is that it goes to Edina Mail and is addressed to all council members. So if you are receiving emails that are addressed to you individually and are not coming through our system, then we would not have those in the packet.
Okay, so that might be a good trigger for us, that if we get something that is addressed to all 5 of us, but not to Edina Mail, then that is not going to be public, and it's not going to be attached to the packet because it came to us individually.
Correct.
Okay, so we should turn around and forward that to Edina Mail? Would that work? If one of us forwarded that to Edina Mail, it would then become public?
It's not really a question of whether or not it is public. It's a question of what the council decided at the work session. So you certainly could change the decision and decide to forward all of those. It's at any individual council member's direction to make that public. But that was just because we had had problems with determining what goes in and what goes out, and it's a lengthy, confusing process for both the people who are communicating to council members and for staff to try to make those judgments.
Right.
That's where the council had fallen at that time.
All right. Okay, well, perhaps we can ask that question and get clarification
Okay.
on that. Okay, because we've gotten some Arden mail, we've gotten some Estelle mail, we've gotten a variety of things. Just a few. With regard to the Public Works Tour, I want to make a shout out to the staff members that keep the machines running, because they have to be running. And it's much appreciated when you are looking at the lift station at Cornelia, knowing what all those pumps are doing, that we want them to continue to do what they're doing, and they are just humming. And so it's clear they're on a frequent maintenance schedule. Every one of them had dates on them of when they've been maintained or rebuilt or whatever. And so just a shout out to the Public Works and Engineering staff who take that so seriously and keep us all safe and served. So thank you. Let's see here. 2 other small things. Okay. Sunday evening, August 13th, was this year's Torchlight concert at Centennial Lakes. This is a concert that begins at dusk, and we play into the dark. And we have about 200 torches and smudge pots and hanging hurricane lights, candles, and I mean, it's a magical evening. And this year it was a magical wet evening. And typically our crowd at Centennial Lakes, if you can imagine where all these people are, it's anywhere between 4,000 and 5,000 people. They are all over the park. And we have sets of speakers going north along the water so that they can hear no matter where they are. And so this year, obviously, we had a smaller crowd. People said, "Are you going to play tonight?" And our answer was, if we have an audience, we'll play. And we had an audience. The bowl, when it's full, is about 1,000 people. That's the seating area in front of the amphitheater, and we had a good crowd. I would say we had between 600 and 700 people. So on a rainy evening, that's pretty darn good. But everything went off without a hitch. The fireworks went off. We had a wonderful evening. The crowd came up and said hello afterward, and Katie and Ralph Campbell, some of you may remember Katie and Ralph. They were there, and it was an evening that was enjoyed, and it truly did end up with fireworks after the band and fireworks in the sky shortly thereafter. So it was really cool, and next year it'll be great weather. My last thing is I attended the meeting of the I-494 Commission. 494 Corridor Commission. One of the items mentioned during that meeting, I think, is going to be of interest to a lot of people, and that is Andrew Latoya is a MnDOT employee working on the 169 project, and MnDOT has put more money into that project and has a completion date planned for September 25th. That's in contrast to November 5th. So that's going to be a huge benefit. It'll be a little painful getting there because the ramps to the Bren Road Bridge are going to close so that project can be completed in the vicinity of Bren Road. So that's actually going to happen sooner than later. So keep your eyes on the MnDOT bulletins. But know that the pain will be short, and the planned opening is now September 25th. So thank you to MnDOT for all they're doing. They've got an enormous number of projects going and planned, and so this is a huge excitement for us to get 169 open again. So that's what I have.
Thank you. Member Staunton?
Nothing for me, Mr. Mayor.
You're not going to talk about studying transportation systems in other locales? Okay. We won't ask you further.
He's going to study transportation in Portugal.
All right, so I just have a couple things. I'll go back to a couple comments that have been made. Last year, I went to that Torchlight concert, and it truly is probably one of the best events that happens in Edina. It was an amazing
There were
kind of
people from
community thing.
Spokane, Washington here.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But for that and for the infrastructure tour, I missed both this year because we took a family vacation, a much-needed break before the kids go back to college. So I apologize for missing the tour. I really want to go on that tour, so I'll have to find another way. So the one thing I want to talk about tonight is just my recurring updates on the Sun Current deal. Jennifer, can you bring up the diagram that I sent you? So it looks a lot like our highway system. There's connections, there's disconnects. So
New delivery route, Vernon Avenue only?
So if you recall, one of the last times we talked about this, there was some confusion about which zip codes are going to get mailed the Sun Current and which ones are not. And so I was connected to a new person, at least for me, Sylvia Fitzsimmons, with the Sun Current papers, and it really gave me an appreciation for the immense amount of change that's happening to make this work in not just our community, but all of the surrounding communities. It's rethinking everything. They have to change the form of the paper. You know, it can't be our newspaper the way we see it today showing up in our mailboxes. And so what we talked about is I said, look, I heard a rumor that not everyone's actually going to be able to get this paper. Can you clarify? And what she clarified, this is as of today, as of this afternoon. Of course, I was driving in my car on my way to Duluth, so it was hard to write this stuff down. So I asked her to then email it to me. So I made sure I had it right. So I put in yellow here the zip codes that are being assigned, you know, that you can subscribe to the Edina Sun Current. And it includes 6 zip codes. And the red line, the red outline is the border of Edina. So as of this afternoon, now they've been tweaking this. So in fact, there may have been some zip codes that were left out when we talked about this several weeks ago. As of today, the only people that would be left out are the ones that would be in 55416, which you can see is predominantly a St. Louis Park zip code, but it includes a key chunk of our Morningside neighborhood. So I put that in solid red. That is the piece of Edina. It's probably 6 city blocks total that, as of today, cannot subscribe to have it mailed to them. Of course they can, but they would have to pay for it, which is different than everyone else on this map. So I've placed another call to Sylvia to say, okay, now I'm seeing it visually. Now let's talk about that little Morningside piece. I see this as a step-by-step process. I think what I'm understanding is now that I understand the challenge they're under, they get better rates. So here's the good news. Their incentive and our incentive is to get every single person to subscribe. Because the more people subscribe, the more cost efficient it is for them to work through the Postal Service to deliver these. And of course, we want everyone to subscribe because it's our official city paper. So we're on the same page, and I said we're trying to do everything we can to get the word out. Apparently, Bloomington is doing really well at this, and she said, I don't know if anyone can beat what they're doing. I'm like, oh, we are going to so beat what Bloomington's doing. So we just got to let everyone know. But I think that might have something to do with the 55416, that because by definition, only a handful of people are going to be subscribing in that area, that's going to be a pretty costly area for them to figure out. So I'm just going to get back with her and see what's really that, can we overcome that issue? So overall good news. The other news that I found out is that, remember last time I updated, it was going to start like September, like the second week in September. It's going to show up in our mailboxes. That has now changed to October 5th, just because they're dealing with all these parts and pieces. I think that's actually good news because it allows us to keep tweaking this and getting it right. And the other thing that's still real is that they're encouraging the the more newsstands, the better. They're willing to put these things wherever we want them. So Jennifer and I have been talking, so I should say that I'm coming from one perspective, Jennifer's talking to him for the other. We're kind of circling the wagons. We're getting this figured out, and it'll all be good. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Oh, okay, good. Thank you. I don't recall if this is in the correspondence or not, but letter from the Met Council that we received a revitalization grant of $338,900 from the Met Council on the Market Street project to do some cleaning up of some of the contamination down there. And so that's a good thing. Personal schedule, let's see. On the 2nd of August, attended the Greater MSP Talent Attraction Strategy meeting over at WSB University, which is a nice facility over right in Golden Valley, one of the big commercial buildings over there. They've got a great setup for a meeting. So thanks to WSB for that. And then on the 3rd, Manager Neal and I met with the owners of Spillane Montage, who've got some serious concerns about the construction schedule and how it could impact their business, and so we're trying to work through some of those things. And Bill Neuendorf was in the meeting as well, and I think Bill's been visiting with him since then and trying to come up with some strategies that will work well there. Also attended the Metro Cities Policy Committee meeting on the 9th. That was a lengthy meeting on a variety of different policy issues. And then on the 11th, we had it was the first day, Friday the 11th was the first morning of the activities at the new Capitol, at the renovated State Capitol building. So they had a ceremony there, a lot of speechifying, some very well done speeches over an hour's period of time. Then they had a march of mayors that I participated in that came from the Veterans Building up to the Capitol. Yeah, no. Dancing mayors? Yeah, dancing suburban mayors? Yeah. No, didn't have that. Didn't give us that latitude. And then we went over, some of us went over, Mayor of St. Louis Park, Jake Spano, and Molly Cummings from Hopkins, and I all went over to the League of Minnesota Cities for a meeting with the Minnesota Mayors Association Exec Committee to talk about some of the things that the Regional Council of Mayors has been working on. In particular, this notion we've developed about trying to extinguish this urban-rural divide problem. How do we go about tackling that problem? For us, we didn't know when we first started whether it was real or myth. It's real. If you live in greater Minnesota, there's a perception that they're not getting the things that they need to have happen in their communities because of things that are happening in the urban environment. It's maybe occurring at the state legislative level more than the local level. They're really interested in developing a dialogue with mayors in the metropolitan area to understand each other better, develop relationships, and then figure out if there's anything further that we want to do about that. So the first pilot is going to be run up in Bemidji on the 11th and 12th of October. The mayor of Bemidji, Rita Albrecht, is going to invite mayors within about a 100-mile radius of Bemidji to come. And then about a half a dozen of us are going to drive up to Bemidji, have a social evening, and then a meeting the next morning on things that are of concern to them, concern to us, understand issues in the metro and our individual cities a little bit better, and see if that develops into something that we want to replicate elsewhere in the state. We're thinking about maybe 4 meetings on a geographic basis, divide the state into quadrants, but we'll see how the first meeting goes in Bemidji with a terrific mayor up there, Rita Albrecht. And then we had, let's see, we have Walk with the Mayor this coming Thursday night. Bob's always good about looking forward on the calendar, not just what occurred in the past. So reminding me to look at the calendar. Walk with the Mayor Thursday night at Roslyn Park, 6:30. I'm giving everybody incorrect information here. Roslyn Park, 6:30, Thursday night, Walk with the Mayor.
The NFL, it's not just weekends anymore.
This is, I think, where you and Mary covered for me last year at Walk with the Mayor. And then on the 21st, Greater MSP is going to have a workshop on their regional indicator dashboard, and so I'll attend that as well. And then the Brennan Road 169 closing that Member Brindle mentioned, Director Milner, could you comment? I mean, we've had a few business folks call us that, you know, tell us they can't tolerate a 2-week closing over there, how it affects their business, and tell us a little bit about the ongoing dialogue you've had with MnDOT, and see if we're going to be able to accommodate some of these folks over there.
So as Councilmember Brindle mentioned, with the shortened schedule to get the actual main line open by the end of September, they originally were gonna just close those ramps individually, do 2 weeks on one, keep the other one open, 2 weeks on the other. But with this accelerated schedule, that's not possible anymore. They're scheduling 2 weeks total closure for those two. They're hoping 10 days. The signed detour will be Shady Oak in north of 62 through the Opus area and around. And Minnetonka's in discussions on hiring their PD like we did over by Dover to do traffic management during those 2 weeks. So that's the discussions where we're at this time.
So for people that want to get onto the end of the Edina side, how are they going to get there?
They'll have to go Shady Oak.
And then across
through
the
the
bridge?
Opus and across the Brennan. Bridge will still be open. It's just
Oh, the bridge will
ramps.
be open.
Bridge is open. It's just the on and off ramps are closed for concrete repairs.
Okay, so they come from the west on Shady Oak, across the bridge,
Correct.
and then they can get either into the strip mall or down into the office complexes.
That's the
to the
signed
north,
detour. There's another access to the east that'll be much more
But at the rush
congested.
hours, it means all of that traffic from United Health Group is
Yeah.
coming right past my house. It's going to be heck.
Yeah, that's the other road, isn't it, Lincoln? Yeah. Okay. All right, that's all I had. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of things. One is a correction about something I mentioned to the council at our last meeting. That is, there is a new state law about providing advance notice of ordinance effective dates. At the last council meeting, I told you it was 10 days following the adoption of the ordinance. It's actually 10 days. We have to post an ordinance a minimum of 10 days prior to council enacting it. So that means we're going to have to, from a staff standpoint, be more careful about that to make sure that we've got an ordinance in a form, at least, and we can predict your actions on it, that we get it online and posted sufficiently so that it meets that new 10-day standard, and we will do that.
It could be enacted immediately then?
As long as we have met the 10-day standard, it's my understanding, and the city attorney can affirm or not affirm this, that as long as we have met the 10-day standard, that you still would have the option of the immediate adoption of it if you meet those other standards. Is that correct, Mr. Knudsen?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, so that's a correction from last time. Something that's coming up that could involve all of you or a subset of you, and maybe the mayor can comment on where this came from, but we have the opportunity afforded to us from Bloomberg Philanthropies to be a host site for something called, I think it's called the Mayor's Challenge, right? Mm-hmm. And we are going to be one of the cities that the Mayor's Challenge comes to. They're going to come here on September 7th. And the idea with the Mayor's Challenge is Bloomberg brings resources to this community or to the communities that host them, and they spend one day in an intensive session to solve a community problem. And the community as we've talked with Bloomberg about what kinds of things qualify as community problems, I think the community problem that best fits what they're good at and probably what we need is affordable housing. And so we have offered that community problem to them, and they do wish to be part of it. It's an all-day session. It occurs on, as I said, I think Thursday, September 7th. We'll be getting more information out to council members if you wish to participate in that community problem-solving event. They're looking for 10 to 15 people of all different community stratas. So they're looking for electeds, appointed, staff, residents, advocates, but a relatively small group. So we're learning a little bit more about how that's going to happen, and I'll keep council informed. The final thing I'll note, and I did note this I think at our last meeting as well, the 2017 Urban Vision Symposium is scheduled for the 13th of October. That's Friday the 13th. It is an all-day event. It is this year, the Urban Plan is the event. So ULI National and ULI Minnesota will come. They will facilitate an all-day session of Urban Plan for public officials. And we're starting to figure out who we should be extending opportunities to be a participant in this day-long event. We have 60 spots. We have 10 teams of 6 that we need to fill. And like I said, it is an all-day event, so we want to get invitations out as fast as we can so that people can reserve time in their personal or their professional calendars to participate. So I've shared some information with council about that, and we're continuing to develop the symposium with the very helpful assistance of ULI Minnesota, and more on that later as well. Thank you.
Good. If we could step back to the Airbnb issue for a moment that Mr. Majikowski raised at 1 Cooper. Maybe Lieutenant Olson has some thoughts on this too. I'm not sure, but how do we, I mean, we said 2 weeks ago that we're going to deal with this on a complaint-driven basis. It sounds like folks in the neighborhood, at least he has complained several times and concerned about nothing happening. So what are we going to do? What's our strategy?
I think I'll ask Director Teague and the city attorney if they can take a stab at that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Mr. Majeski, I think I'm pronouncing that right, did send us some of the proof that he had, some of those pictures. We have sent all the information. We've notified the property owner of the violation. He's claiming that he's not in violation. We have sent all of our evidence to our prosecuting attorney to make a decision as to, whether we've got a good case where we can find him in violation of our ordinance. So that's the status on that one. Anything, Roger?
Okay. Do we feel like our ordinance is crafted well enough to address these situations? It seems like we're going to get into some protracted conversation with people. In the meantime, folks in neighborhoods are, going to be going through this experience.
Yes, we believe our ordinance is very clear that these types of uses are not allowed. It's the actual enforcement and having to prove that they're in violation of our codes that's the challenge. But our codes are very clear that that type of transient occupancy is not allowed. You can't rent your house out. Well, you can rent your house out, but it's for a minimum of 30 days. So that short term, that short time stay is not allowed.
Okay.
In his comments this evening, he mentioned that there are 17 Airbnbs here or something in the teens. There are many more than that are online. When you look at Airbnb in Edina, there are hundreds, right? Some are apartments, some are single-family homes.
There could be.
Okay.
Yeah, I suspect you will begin to hear from those people who own those properties as well, as they've got a lot of money on the line in some cases. So, and particularly around, as the speaker noted, around Super Bowl time, it's quite possible they have begun already to commit to those dates. I'm sure of it. So, we have begun the process of trying to figure out what an enforcement action would look like on the scale that we're talking about here, because it is hundreds. Is it just letters to people to say, please stop doing this? Is it letters to them and then getting Pat Leach involved to prosecute them on a case-by-case basis? We need to put some thought into that, but we haven't ignored the speaker's concerns, and we have passed those on to our prosecuting attorney.
Could we create some kind of civil administrative fine system where or do you still end up having to prove they are in violation? Because I'm thinking if we had some kind of a civil fine system where they could appeal it after the fact, maybe we'd cite them and they'd have a $200 civil forfeiture or civil penalty for violating the ordinance.
We can look into that, but I think, frankly, that would be problematic.
It seems like it has some due process infirmities on the face of.
And there's some issues about our authority to impose administrative fines. But I think a first thing we've talked about is notifying people, because I would assume that many people who are renting these Airbnbs don't know there's an ordinance against it. So I think always the first step is to let people know that they can't do it, it's a violation.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good thought, good fundamental thought. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we'll adjourn to go into the HRA meeting. All right, anything further for the council? Council meeting stands adjourned. Call to order the Human Rights, Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting for the City of Edina, August 15, 2017 at 8:16 p.m. Roll call, please, Ms. Tim.
Commissioner Brindle? Here. Commissioner Fisher?
Here.
Commissioner Staunton?
Here.
Commissioner Stewart?
Here.
Chair Hovland?
Here. We have a form of meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Had a motion and a second to adopt the HRA agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Community comment. Anyone in the audience who wishes to comment with regard to any matter not on the HRA agenda this evening?
Frank Lorenz, do I need to give my address again? for the
Please.
Minutes here.
Yes, please.
7151 York Avenue South. Since the city manager just mentioned the Bloomberg, is it Bloomberg Foundation or Bloomberg Charities or?
It is a foundation, but I think they call it Bloomberg Philanthropies.
Philanthropies, okay, good. Not clear how successful Michael Bloomberg has been in remaking the city of New York in his image. He's certainly very wealthy, so he can get a platform to say whatever he wants. He's given millions of dollars to the Minneapolis school district so far, and it hasn't moved the needle, but nothing else has either. So, but the sad reality is that affordable housing in the metro area, which includes Edina, really means that you have to be able to build a one-bedroom apartment with a mortgage that's about $120,000, because when you take a 30-year mortgage and reckon on the debt service and the insurance and the substantial property taxes, you come up with a monthly payment number, and if that is not more than 30% of the household income of the low-income people, then it's not affordable housing. So the challenge is to be able to build a one-bedroom apartment with a total cost of occupancy of about $125,000, or the total mortgage cost about $125,000. Now, lots in Edina, vacant property of which there's very little, the bare land sells for $125,000. So I would say that you have a fairly steep hill to climb, and it means that for starters, there can't be any land cost in a property that would be developed to be affordable housing. It also means that over time, those apartments can't pay any property taxes. So those are the two foundational pillars that you've got to work with. And if Bloomberg and his geniuses can figure out how to build affordable housing in Edina, my hat is off to them, but there are some interesting mechanisms of pre-engineered, pre-built apartments. They're building a few of them in Manhattan where they truck individual rooms to the job site, and they're pre-plumbed and pre-wired and whatever. But the reality is, for the average low income in the Twin Cities, people cannot begin to pay a mortgage on or the equivalent rent thereof if the property costs more than $125,000 to build. So I'd be fascinated to sit in on this discussion on September 7th, but you're not just between a rock and a hard place, you're flat on your back on a hard place with tons of rock on your chest. So.
All right, thanks, Mr. Lorenz. Anyone else? We have a consent agenda in front of us this evening. There's a couple items on the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the HRA that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Discussion? All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Carried. Any other business for the HRA? All right, stand adjourned.